I'm going to explain the theory simply. Core 1 and Core 2 are being split into an episodic format. Core 1 is already out, with episodes 88 to 90 released on streaming websites. You would see these on anime piracy sites, but the piracy sites don't have any motivation to post to episodic format since they believe the special will be the exact same. In the non-canon version of AoE Concluded 12, which was before Core 2 came out, I cut out an entire section explaining why I think that there is a chance that AoE won't happen in Core 2, but rather in the episodic format. I cut that part out because I thought it was controversial, but now I'm going to show it since there's nothing left to hide.
The episodic format has other possible implications for AoE too. It's really strange how we're getting the episodic format after Core 2, with a new opening and ending. Again, Core 2's ending song is called To You in 2,000 Years, or 20,000 Years From Now, and the episodic format's opening is called The Final Titan by Linked Horizon, with the ending called See You Later by Ai Higuchi. Core 2 releases November 4th. For Core 1, episodes 88 to 90 will be aired from noon on Sunday, November 5th. To put it simply, there's no weekly wait for them. All those episodes are broadcasted together. And then, episodes 91 to 94 will be distributed sequentially from November 19th onwards. This means, for whatever reason, they're going to release those episodes once a week, unlike Core 1. This is where I start rambling, but I do want to bring attention to this possibility. I don't like this idea, but notice how Core 1 and Core 2 are literally named the Final Chapters Special. I don't like the idea of Core 2 being the manga adaptation, and the episodes after it being the AoE, but there are subtle cues for it that I wish weren't true. In the case for Core 2 being the manga adaptation, this would give context for the title of this core's ending song having 20,000 years from now in it, with the cover being someone at the entrance of this tree. This seems like a direct reference to the ending of the manga timeline, where Baron is at the entrance of this tree. When Ymir got her Titan powers, it symbolizes this image. Once again, the Earth Devil meets this person who offers an apple, giving themselves to the Earth Devil. It's implied in chapter 133 that Eren and Ymir have split paths between each other. In the manga ending, Ymir was freed from paths, and her being freed from paths put an end to the Titan powers. However, there's one critical element of that that's still missing. Paths is still not ended yet, and Eren is still trapped in paths. That's why a new tree has grown from where Eren's head was buried. And when Baron reached this tree, I think in the possibility of the manga ending being adapted in Core 2, Baron will fall into this tree, just like Ymir did, and we'll get a repeat of the Earth Devil dynamic, which is this kid giving the apple to the Earth Devil. And who is the Earth Devil here? Eren himself. This is symbolized further by how the Earth Devil has pointed ears, just like Eren's Titan. So if the manga ending were to be adapted, that's why, in this cover, the hourglass is tipping. This would also explain whatever expanded significantly was.
Mappa was initially confident that they could complete Core 1 and Core 2 in 11 months, but they had to delay that due to the work expanding significantly. What happened? When Mappa needs to add a further deadline, considering how the labor there is like slave work, it must mean that something has gone completely off course. Not only that, but if you weren't aware, Mappa was apparently facing an incredibly harsh deadline even with Core 2's extended deadline by about 8 months. They were preparing to delay it even further. For example, the AOT after party event mentioning the possibility of the broadcast being delayed. The 100 cams showing Eren voicing the "No I don't want that" scene while he was somehow still in the storyboard stages. The photography director saying it was basically impossible to complete production on time. Mima-san saying that production still isn't close to completion. You can see from this leak that was merely 5 days before release that just by comparing it to the final product that there were many things that needed to be revised. The animated background, the digital lines on the face, and overall compositing. The reason why there were scenes that didn't have any digital lines on the characters' faces wasn't because they chose to, but because there was simply no time to do so. With so much time to animate, it makes no sense at all why they would need to take even more time and ultimately still be rushed to the breaking point, even with having to create complicated animation. 139 was so rushed it was like it wasn't significant or actually mattered in the anime at all, despite it being the ending. Having to extend something so much is completely unusual and strange for Mappa to do, considering how it was only Core 1 and Core 2 that had to be completed at the time, but the amount of work expanded significantly. I think a major factor that points to AoE happening in the episodic format is the covers for each song by Linked Horizon. I don't think it's a coincidence at all how the Linked Horizon cover for Core 2 directly references the manga ending, while the cover for the episodic format directly references ANR. About 12 hours after Core 2 ended, Core 1's episodic format released, which included the new opening and ending. Let's analyze the opening song first. It's baby Eren reaching out towards the sun, but the sun is blocked by a wall. Ymir appears for a frame, blocking the view. This symbolizes how Ymir is getting in the way of Eren's freedom somehow. Here, you can see Titan Eren. And what can you see here? Eren crushing Ymir. This is also a parallel to the crushed butterfly we see in the rumbling opening. This crushed butterfly represents Mikasa. And who is a parallel to Mikasa? Ymir. What's important here is that Ymir's eyes aren't even obscured. When her eyes are obscured, It indicates that she is merely following the will of someone else. But no, whatever is going on at this moment, she's doing it by her own choice. And Eren is fighting against that. Ymir is the epitome of fate and destiny, and Eren is shown literally crushing her, symbolizing how he is literally crushing fate. In the next shot, you can see Eren standing on the wall, shooting a bow. This is a direct reference to the Gurren no Yumiya music video. The link is in the description. I explained the significance of this music video in my second AoE theory video ever, but I'll explain the key parts again here. There's a bunch of fire symbolism, like Berserk Eren. Rivo, who sometimes symbolizes Eren, literally turns into a black bird. While it's raining, this woman, symbolized as Miksa, is shown with the titan looming over her. It's implied that this titan kills her. The lyrics say, "Who only laments his powerlessness won't be able to change a thing." And in this shot, you can see Rivo giving who represents Eren a bow. This is symbolism for Eren, who is lamenting his powerlessness, taking the bow, the will to fight. With the bow, he screams, and everything goes red. This is directly related to the rumbling opening. Eren is screaming. Eren is on the wall. Everything is tinted red. The lyrics say, "Soon, one day, he will bear his fangs against fate." This is the exact opposite of Eren in the manga outcome. In fact, this entire music video depicts Eren, who is lamenting his powerlessness, finally taking the will to fight. You can see that a woman representing Miksa shoots a bow and kills Eren, symbolizing the manga outcome. We see an Eren that's determined shooting a bow and killing a whiny version of himself. What do we see in the opening? Eren shooting that exact same bow. The lyrics in the opening then say, "The slave that once dreamed of freedom watched many offered hearts pass on and became a bird drenched in red." In Linked Horizon's music video For You in 2000 Years or 20,000 Years From Now, the lyrics say, "I have watched it all, within the great tree's cavity." This represents how Eren in the manga outcome was still alive, trapped in paths, and watching everything through paths. So Eren watched many offered hearts pass on, and symbolically became a bird drenched in red by not stopping paradise from being destroyed. Then the opening's lyrics follow up with, "The path paved with corpses reaches beyond the ocean on the heels of war." With the rumbling of the earth in tow, the path is just moving forward. This implies that this takes place after Eren became that bird, implying that the manga outcome was a thing of the past, as in, a previous timeline. We see Eren in paths, alone. We get flashes of memories, representing how Eren is in a mess of memories as stated before. The lyrics say, "Sinking its roots into the horizon at dusk, awaiting someone." Sinking its roots represents the manga outcome, when Eren became that tree, awaiting someone. But awaiting who? Who would Eren be waiting for? Eren is awaiting the person who will give that apple to him. Eren is waiting for Baron. Everything falls into a vortex, culminating into Titan Eren screaming on a rocky field. This could imply that instead of Eren giving up, the mess of memories turns into his resolve. This is very significant, because Titan Eren isn't just on any rocky field. He's on the rocky field that the Alliance is present at during the rumbling. It's actually quite a popular theory that in AoE, Eren's attack titan would come back one last time. These next few shots represent how Mappa ran out of ideas, so they started using shots from previous episodes. The lyrics say, "We're not slaves. When we're born, all of us are free." This directly goes against how Eren is depicted in the manga outcome, when Eren says, "I'm a slave to freedom." After these shots of the Alliance, we get this shot. I don't think I need to explain, but all I'm going to say is that Eren's eyes are glowing bluer than they ever have in the last 10 years at least. That's not a joke. It's actually been 10 years at least since Berserk Eren first appeared. The lyrics here say, "Kill me if you can." Especially with how Eren is shown during these lyrics, clearly depict Eren challenging the Alliance to kill him. But that's not what Eren did in the manga outcome. He wanted the Alliance to kill him. That, along with the blue eyes here, show that Eren is truly ready to fight for himself. In the next shot, we see Mikasa crying, with tears in her eyes while she fights. You can see that Mikasa is fighting while she's crying, and she's clearly very upset about something. This is the exact opposite of what happens in Core 2. Mikasa isn't crying at all, but smiling. If you remember, way back then I used this image as evidence. Will it be tears or a smile that she will show at the end? In Core 2, she showed a smile, and in the episodic format, she will show tears. Just like how in Core 2, Eren sacrificed liberty, but in the episodic format, he will sacrifice justice. In all the still shots after, you can see flames, but let's just assume that that's a coincidence and move on to the next shot. We can see Eren opening his eyes inside his Titan. There's no lighting from outside here, so this is completely different from what we saw in Core 2. In fact, this fits Eren in Core 1, not in Core 2. You can see Core 1 Eren's design here, and you can see that in Core 2, Eren's design is completely different. Eren's eyes were closed in Core 2, even though they were open in Core 1. Eren's eyes are much greener, while in Core 1, Eren's eyes are more blue. Eren's hair in Core 2 is completely different from Core 1, but in the opening, the way Eren looks fits Core 1, not Core 2. This wasn't just artistic choice. This deliberately shows that Eren is in fact fully awake, and it's not when Mikasa goes in for the kill. This is the final shot in the opening. Kid Eren and Ymir standing in the wasteland caused by the rumbling. Obviously, this never happened in the manga outcome. Going back to before, I'll explain what's going on with Ymir. In one of my old videos, the Z AoE theory video made a year and a half ago, I claimed that Ymir was the reason Eren was predetermined to reach the manga outcome.
Imagine that the difference between these outcomes would be Ymir choosing a person. Ymir would choose Mikasa in the manga, so Eren's mind was altered to reach that outcome, which is why he was a wimp here. So in the outcome of the ANR ending, Eren would make a deal with Ymir, which would be her being reincarnated into Historia's child. Eren would tell Ymir that he will show her him penetrating Historia for Ymir to choose him. So in the manga timeline, Mikasa is chosen, but it results in failure and the timeline is reset, so in the presumed final timeline, Ymir chooses Eren.
I don't believe fully that Ymir is manipulating Eren's mind, but I do believe that Ymir is the reason why things are predetermined for Eren. I think Eren fights against Ymir's initial plan in the episodic format, which is what this shot represents. That's why Ymir's eyes aren't obscured as well, because she's intentionally choosing for things to end with Mikasa kissing Eren's decapitated head. Ymir also representing the butterfly here has other massive implications too. If you're not familiar with Muv-Luve's storyline, you should watch this recap video I made for the game. By now I'm sure you're already aware how Muv-Luve is connected to Attack on Titan in major ways. Sumika in Muv-Luve represents Mikasa, and in Muv-Luve, a little girl named Kasumi is paralleled with Sumika. Kasumi is also the name Sumika if you rearrange the letters. It's revealed in Muv-Luve that Kasumi has telekinetic abilities, and has been connecting to Sumika's mind to figure out more about her. Kasumi has a deep connection to Sumika. This is confirmed in the manga outcome, when Mikasa reveals that Ymir has been connecting to her, causing her headaches. This is where the connection between Mikasa and Ymir becomes relevant in AoE. If you remember Lost Girls, a butterfly speaks to Mikasa and takes her on a trip through an alternate timeline. I believe that this butterfly is none other than Ymir herself, communicating to Mikasa through paths. In Muv-Luve, Sumika dies. It's only when Sumika dies does Kasumi reveal the truth to Tekeru. Tekeru talks to Kasumi, and Kasumi gives the full story in detail as to what was going on relating to the time loops and alternate timelines. So, if this shot is foreshadowing a future event, I think this will be Eren and Ymir talking after Mikasa is dead, and this is when Eren learns the full story about what was happening behind the scenes. Overall, almost nothing in this opening foreshadows the manga outcome, and almost all of it foreshadows the opposite. Almost all of it foreshadows Eren fighting for himself, and winning. The thing that trips most people up on this theory is the ending, See You Later, by Ai Higuchi. The visuals don't depict anything AoE related at all, and it only shows Eren and Mikasa being romantic together. My friends say that this is actually major doomium, because it looks like they're promoting Eremika, and by default prioritizing the manga outcome. That's not true though. In fact, this ending is actually major hopium. Allow me to explain. This isn't just Eren and Mikasa being romantic together. This is Mikasa's ideal world where she can spend eternity with Eren. This symbolically shows Mikasa in the afterlife. There are multiple key indicators of this. The least important point is Mikasa falling into the water and being unconscious in it while it's nighttime, which could symbolize her being dead. The butterfly that represents Mikasa that is crushed in the rumbling opening is revived, implying that Mikasa died and woke up in the afterlife. Third, look at the position Mikasa is in during this shot. Does it look familiar? It's the Mikasa death pose that has been referenced time and time again. In Red Swan's cover art, you can also see a woman representing Mikasa in the same position. In the CD for Red Swan, you can see the red feathers shown in the Under the Tree cover art. In the music video for the first ending song for Attack on Titan, there's a woman that represents Mikasa holding a birdcage. Because of Mikasa, Eren isn't free, so Eren has to kill Mikasa to free himself. You can see later on Mikasa is resting in her death pose. At the very end of the music video, you literally see this. This is a very clear representation of Mikasa dying. So Mikasa dies in this pose, and this ending song symbolizes her waking up in the afterlife with tears in her eyes in the same pose she died in, meeting Eren. Again, the butterfly isn't crushed anymore, representing how she's in the afterlife. So this ending song isn't doomium, but rather the exact opposite. There's something in Core 2 I've noticed and pointed out. There are more hints in Core 2 that point to a time loop. Eren says, so many times I tested it to no avail. Things always occurred exactly as I saw in my memories of the future. Armin says, Eren, it's true that there's no end in sight for this conflict, and I'm sure the hell we went through has happened over and over. At the end of their conversation, Armin says him and Eren will be together forever in hell. What does Armin say in episode 6?
地獄だ。いや、地獄になったんじゃない。今まで勘違いをしていただけだ。最初からこの世界は 地獄だ。
Our next meeting will be a fight to the death, and the next one after that. There's no reason for Eren and Armin to be fighting each other in Hell, but it would make sense for them to be fighting each other if Hell was symbolism for the time loop. I don't think Armin is aware of the time loop, but I think the story is hinting at a time loop through this dialogue.
アルミン、時間だ。ここで過ごした記憶は消すが、全てが終わった時にまた思い出すだろう。
Why? How do you know? How do you know?
So, the manga timeline isn't just a timeline, but rather its own established time loop. It reaches the same conclusion each time. This is a crack theory I formed while talking with my friends. The episodic format ends at episode 94, but it's not explicitly stated that's when Attack on Titan ends. And 4 episodes is a little too short for Core 2, so they would have to cut out things from Core 2 if they wanted to fit it in the episodic format. Episodes 88 to 94 make up Part 3, and are 7 episodes total. So what if Part 3 has 6 more secret episodes? This would mean that there are 13 episodes total for Part 3, and Attack on Titan would reach episode 100 before ending. We know that Isayama likes numerology, considering how the last chapter in the manga was chapter 139, the 13-year curse, and the 9 titans. If the 13 episode crack theory was true, this would mean that Attack on Titan would end January 21st, 2024. The Attack on Titan 10th anniversary event starts January 27th to 28, just a week after Attack on Titan would end if the 13 episode crack theory was true. This means that episode 100 has to be before January 27th. This leads to another slight cue that suggests the 13 episode crack theory is true. Core 1's episodic format was released all at once instead of weekly, on November 5th. If the 13 episode crack theory is true, that means they were forced to do this. If it was weekly, the second episode of Core 1 would be on November 12th, and the final episode for Core 1 on November 19th. This would be fine, but Core 2's episodic format comes out November 19th, which is too early, which doesn't fit a week-long break for each episode. Naturally, they should be able to delay Core 2's episodic format until a week later to keep the continuity, but that would mean episode 100 releases the day of the event, which would obviously be way too chaotic. Therefore, they were forced to release Core 1 all at once. In fact, this is the only context where this decision makes sense. Though, keep in mind that this is just a crack theory, and it is most likely wrong. Here's some points that I forgot to add. Everything about the decision to turn Core 1 and Core 2 into an episodic format is extremely suspicious in general. Taking the time and money to license an episodic format, taking the time to split a special that's supposed to be like a movie into multiple, taking the time to format it all into an episodic format, and secretly making an opening and ending for an episodic format that will only get a few to watch doesn't make sense outside of the context of an AoE. A good comparison is Steins Gate, an anime about time travel. There's the normal episodes, but there's a special made for this anime called 23 Beta. This special explores an alternate timeline that's different from the anime. You're not required to watch 23 Beta. It's not required to watch it to understand the rest of the story, but it'll help you understand the alternate timeline and overall exposition for the story. In the context of an AoE, this explains why separate specials were made for the manga outcome. In this context, if all of this effort towards an episodic format was for an AoE, then people would have a reason to watch it, and putting all this time, money, and effort into making this episodic format would finally make sense. You can see strings holding up Eren's arms here in this shot. However, in this shot from the opening, those strings holding up Eren's arms aren't present anymore. The reason why this is so suspicious is because this can't just be a simple animation error, because this isn't 2D animated. This is a 3D model, which means those strings were intentionally cut out. The strings that attach Eren to his Titan are commonly used as imagery representing how Eren isn't free, like this for example. The only possible explanation for why they would remove those strings is to symbolize how Eren is free, which is supported by his glowing blue eyes. But in the manga outcome, Eren isn't free. But you may ask, what in this opening is going to actually happen in the anime, and what here is just symbolism? What's shown in an opening is typically split into 3 distinct things. 1. Random things that have no meaning just to be hype. 2. Symbolism that vaguely represents what happens in the plot. Or 3. All these specific things that will happen in the part that the opening is in. An example of a thing that's just there to be hype is this. An example of symbolism that vaguely represents what happens in the plot is this. An example of an oddly specific thing that will happen in the part that the opening is in is this. So applying this to the new opening, an example of things that's just there to be hype are these. An example of things that are symbolism for what happens in the plot are these. An example of all these specific things that will happen in the part that the opening is in are these. This is why I think that the plot of AoE at least won't start in the movie. It will come full force in the episodic version of Part 3. Before the final season Part 1 came out, the composer for My War was aware of how long the final season would be. As his prediction, he said he thinks there will be a final season Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, and then the real final episode will be a movie.
俺は、まあ本当に今回ね、言うけど、ファイナルシーズンって言ってんじゃん。アタックオンタイタン、進撃の巨人ファイナルシーズンって言ってんじゃん。でも僕は、こっから、この単行本で言うと、何巻から、こっからここまで、今回放送されるんで、アニメスタッフチームから。それがちょっと何巻から何巻まではちょっとね、言わないけど。だからまだ続くよ。アニメはまだ続くよ。俺だから、前も言ったと思うけど、真のファイナルがそう、俺それ映画なんじゃないかな。俺の予想。
So applying all of this to what we know now, there's Part 1, Part 2, the specials are Part 3, Part 1, which is Core 1, and Part 3, Part 2, which is Core 2. So Core 1 and Core 2 make up Part 3 as a 2.5 hour long special combined, which was their original plan. So that's about 35 episodes in length, which would be reasonable for Noko to assume as 3 parts. Then we can assume that Part 4 is whatever happens in the episodic format, and maybe the real final episode can be a movie after all. The idea of the plot for AoE ending with a final movie is cool, but personally, I don't want that. The last thing I forgot to add is this detail I realized is relevant in this ending song. As I said, I think this is symbolism for Mikasa waking up in the afterlife, and Mikasa being in her death pose here complements that idea. She's laying on a yellow field, but if you look below her, you can see that the ground around her is stained red, almost like it's symbolizing how the ground is stained with blood. Her blood. In conclusion, the AoE happening in an episodic format makes more sense than it did for Core 2 being AoE. After Core 1, it felt like as if the AoE vibes were just completely lost. When I learned that Attack on Titan was going to have a long episode for its conclusion, this made me confused, because having it released all at once ruins the surprise and hype that an anime original ending would have. I don't believe in the idea of the plot for AoE happening in a movie. People wouldn't be that mad about a surprise new ending if it was already finished in the form of an episodic format, but the idea of having to wait longer for something like a movie would make everybody upset. People just want to move on. An AoE that happens in an episodic format feels like the only logical way for AoE to happen, at least for me. I'll repeat what I said before. As always, I'm 100% sure that AoE will happen. When AoE happens, those who survived until the end will reach a state of hopium so high that it's beyond the reality of hopium and doomium. When AoE happens, the duality will be shattered, and those who were hope chests until the end will reach their final state, transduality. Also, before this video ends, I'm finishing up my final AoE tribute video, Day of Singularity Chapter 3. This releases after AoE happens as a send-off. This tribute series has been planned out for about 2 years now, so I hope you watch it all. I'll see you there.